Three, two, one. Hello, hello, and welcome to my chat today with my special guest, Angelically Aligned by Samantha. Hello, Samantha.
Hello, hi, I'm Samantha. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And can I ask, whereabouts in the world are you?
So, I am actually located in the US. I'm in a little town in Missouri, actually.
Oh, lovely. I've never,
Yeah.
never been to Missouri. To be fair, I've only been to a few places in America and a lot to the West Coast, where Amazon's headquartered, and also Canada. But it it seems like from what you share, a really beautiful place. Maybe I should add it to my list. Um, and I'd love to share with our audience today a bit more about you, like about your journey, and about your recent transformations and your offerings as well, like what you'd like to help others with on your journey. But yeah, maybe we could start with the question I love to get asked, um, which is like a bit about yourself. Like either you can share as much as you want about your life, and I'd love to hear a bit about your awakening, your awakenings. Like, were you born like like this, like us, or were you was this later? Like for me, it was 2017. What tells about your journey?
Yeah, so my journey has been a wild ride for one. I actually spiritually awakened in 2019 during the whole pandemic. It's kind of started for me around that time. But at the time, I had my middle child, and she came into my life as a very, very gifted soul. And a lot of times, whenever you're a mother to a very gifted child and you're not awakened, you're forced into an awakening, a spiritual awakening. So, when I had her, it was a complete catalyst to everything in my life. I had to learn how to raise a starseed child because that's essentially what she is, a diamond soul starseed. And she's very sensitive to the world. So at the time, I was not necessarily awakened when I had her, but through having her, it was around 6 months later down the road that I went through this spiritual awakening where I started to realize there was more than just what I could see in my world. And having her energy and her frequency was so sensitive that it triggered this change in me to um, find ways to be a better person,
Mm.
to be a better mother, to learn to communicate better, to learn to hold space better. So I started to go through my awakening and I found like a psychic, really, that was the very first thing was a psychic medium. I found a psychic medium, and at the time, um, my husband's father had passed away. So we were kind of in between the like, what happens after death? What happens? So we found her and she opened a whole slew for me. And that started my journey in awakening. And it just fast forwarded. Once I found the psychic medium, it was like spirit knew I was listening and started to send me more signs, more synchronicities, more people on this path. And it just slowly started to transform into this big blown spiritual adventure. So it was about 2020, I had a Kundalini awakening after the spiritual awakening 2019. And that was the catalyst to really, really stepping into this journey and expanding myself. Um, that Kundalini awakening was like a spontaneous awakening for me. So it shook my entire world. It changed everything. It reprogrammed me. And I started to step more into my divine feminine embodiment. And as I stepped more into that divine feminine embodiment, it also guided me more down the journey. And then I went through, um, working with crystals, moldavite, Andara crystals, um, and all of those were part of the journey into this part of my path. And once I had that Kundalini awakening, it actually triggered like the dark night of the soul for me. So I spent like a year in this dark night of the soul, and all the stuff that you feel you've held on to just coming up, coming out, and releasing. And it was just like so much healing. So I was forced into a lot of healing. And then around, I would say, a year after the Dark Night of the Soul, the Kundalini Awakening, I found a shaman who helped me heal a lot of stuff that I was carrying from my childhood trauma and whatnot. And the shaman opened up a doorway for me to realize and learn who I was and that this was my path to be a healer. So through shamanism, that is actually how I found my healing path. And I have spent years now on the healing path and healing myself and stepping into my angelic embodiment of who I am and what I do. And I found that the most beautiful part of the journey is when you regather and find yourself through losing yourself. You lose yourself so that you can find who you truly are. So most of the journey has been healing, self-healing, and then finding people on the path with me. I am a teacher, just like you, for many people. So I found that on the path as a teacher, you most of the time are lonely. You don't really have anyone to share the journey with. You're kind of on the path, just floating through the water, trying to figure out the next hurdle to get through, So it's been a big change for sure. I would say that the biggest part of my spiritual awakening was shedding everything that I wasn't so that I could step into the angelic essence that I am now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So many things. What an amazing adventure. And I mean, I don't want to belittle it anyway, because I know there was tough times in there as well. You were saying, um, what right at the start when you said your middle child when they were born. This was this 2019.
Yeah.
Um, as you said that you went through this awakening. Immediately, I felt your heart, like you're showing your heart opening, and it's like, and it's like that parenting instinct, the parental instinct of, whoa, this is a big responsibility. This child needs more of me. Now's the time, and it feels like so. There's all of us have like these different triggers to. It's like our souls have said. There's not a date. There's not a year. There's an event, and there's an energy about that event that we're like, okay, like this little bell rings, and you're like, ding, ding, ding. It's like wakey, wakey time, like, gah. And what fascinates me as well is the pandemic was a huge, like, I feel for all the irony of the conspiracy theories of it being as an attempt to divide us. It seemed to have this massive explosion for me in helping accelerate so much of my journey, because everyone started using Zoom. Everyone started being able to, like, they had time to come on. I could do a couple of sessions a week. I had time to do it after work. I didn't have to commute, and it left us all at home with ourselves, right? Like, it's a really intense time. It's a bit like, I did wonder in the past whether this studio that I'm in now, I know it looks a bit like a padded cell for maybe if you've lost your mind. And I kept having visions of this very room. And I was kind of always worried about recreating it like this, because I was like, is this a negative experience? Like, no, no, no. This is like you going inwards. It's your safe space within you. This is the work you need to do first on your journey. Um, and yeah, thank you for sharing so much. It's like that next awakening you had with the Kundalini awakening it reminded me a lot of my experience, but also recently when I've been doing when I advertise services, like I do psychic Swedish massage and psychic reflexology. I get a lot of people who come for a psychic reading, and they're almost, many of them are almost in like a pre-awakened state. I'd maybe describe it, where they're mentally they're open, and their hearts are just starting to open a bit more, and they're like, tell me about these messages and these things that come through. And at some point, and it I feel like for a lot of these people, something will happen, and it's just like the heart goes, okay, now. And suddenly the heart opens up, like, whoa, now we need to go through an awakening journey. And as you say, this whole rebirthing, and I wish I could say that it's just once, right? It's like good news,
Right, it's
but
multiple.
it never stops, right? I think that's
Yeah.
why I feel hesitant about using the word awakening, but I don't have a better or awakenings, but I don't have a better word yet. Um,
Yeah, transformations, rebirths. It's, yeah, I mean, one leads to another, and the more you open your heart, the more that you're awakened even more. You think that, okay, this is what I see. I perceive the world. I understand. We're all one. This is all love. And then you're like, oh, a switch comes online. And it's like, okay, another one. Time to get your ducks in a row. There's another one coming online for you. And you start to notice the pattern too. You start to feel it coming. You start to recognize, like you see the synchronicities, you feel the energies, and then you're like, oh, okay, going through another layer of remembering myself. That's kind of like how I feel an awakening is. It's more so of like remembering who you are, really.
yeah.
Remembering your path, remembering your calling, and remembering that, we came here for a divine reason and purpose.
Yeah, it's like our souls agreed when roughly with the energy of like a kind of trigger point, and then our human is like, okay, gimme, like now's the time. I'm ready, and we start receiving all that, all that's within us, or more of it. Often I see it's like our superpowers are coming in, but as you say,
Mhm.
like I've had it's, my spider senses are tingling as you're saying, that feeling of like it coming. It's like, oh no, it's coming again. Um, Yesterday I was in my morning meditation, and my higher self showed itself to me. I showed myself to me as like this. It looked very similar to me to somewhere between like an Arcturian or Zeta, kind of like a hybrid of human, like of the three species, definitely an elongated head. And I was like, I was shocked. It's like, hang on, are you my higher self? Who are you? And like, my higher self was laughing. It's like, I'm you, John. Like in this life, and I'm like, that's impossible. Like that, like I thought my world was already pretty magical, but like, how does that work? And said, this is just an introduction to the concept. You're going to learn more. I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then I was asking my guides today, and they said, so um, it might not surprise you, or it might surprise you, but depending on who your customers are, over time, over a long, long time, you become more like your customers. And it's like, oh, so pointing upwards at the stars, they're my customers too. Yes. Oh, great. That makes sense. Do I have to look like them? Is that will John like evolve into being this? And it's like, well, you get to decide all that. It's like, wow, these are kind of things on the edge of my the cutting edge of my integration process. I'm like, I'm still not sure I fully get all that yet, or how that feels, but I always feel like we're introduced to things at the right pace where it's not going to completely derail us. There will be some derailing, including like stopping what you're doing and having to change your path. Um, and I was going to ask you about, it was when you said you went through your dark night of the soul, and you talked about some of the darker aspects you had to face, the healing, and you mentioned childhood. As part of that, I think you're also saying that you had to let go of a lot of the things in your life, or like the older versions of you had.
Yeah.
Can you describe some of those?
So, yeah, so I am a very sensitive soul, and I've been sensitive my entire life. I actually turned it off because of an extreme amount of trauma as a child. I was born into a very karmic family, and a lot of really gifted, highly sensitive star seeds are born into very karmic families. We're
Mhm.
here to change the energy and the trajectory of our lineage. So when I went through my dark night of the soul, it was a lot of like emotions that were not necessarily serving me anymore, ways of living, ways of eating, ways of responding and reacting to people, places, things. I know for me, it was a lot of like, back then I was described as somebody who had like anger issues, and they labeled it as bipolar disorder. So I never necessarily believed that that was what was wrong with me. I
Mhm.
just felt like, okay, there's something more, because my father, he was most certainly had that disorder. And they tried to project that onto me as a teenager. And really, what it was I was taking in so much of this energy that wasn't mine. Now,
Mhm.
granted, some of it was me. I'm not going to say that it's all my father and, it's not everyone else, but those energies and things came to the surface from the Kundalini awakening where I couldn't live that way anymore. I
Yeah.
couldn't express myself in those ways anymore. And when a Kundalini awakening happens, it is purifying the vessel, the body to hold more of your light, more of your essence. And whenever I had to face those dark parts of myself, it was moments of feeling like I was depressed for days, weeks, months of just crying over everything, looking inside of myself and finding these parts of myself that I had buried from, the emotions of things that happened to me as a child and, the anger that I stored in me and I never could express because I wasn't taught to express how I felt. It was
Mm.
more of like, hold it inside, don't cry, don't cry. And as a woman, like crying is a very powerful healing ability that we have. So I spent most of my life never crying. And then, from this Kundalini awakening, it forced me to cry, to express. And I didn't know how to express myself. And it was my beautiful husband that taught me how to sit down and communicate in a healthy way. I was
Mm.
grown up in screaming and yelling environment and cussing and like nobody held space for you. It was judge you, suppress, repress, So when I went through this dark night of a soul, it was like I saw this inner child of me who I was and the suffering that I'd gone through and just all the darkness that I had just kept inside that
Mhm.
necessarily wasn't darkness. It was more of like my shadows and, my lessons, my teachings. And as I sat with those emotions and those feelings and sensations from a space of non judgment, that's where the real medicine came online. That's where the real awakening really transformed because I could sit with what I was feeling and not judge it anymore. And I was forced, my friends fell away. I found that most of my friends at the time were trauma bonded. So we had the same trauma and we had the same experiences. So as I started to heal these parts of myself through shamanism and shadow work and, shamanic journeying and light language, um, I had to release things and people. So as I released these emotions, there was no longer room for that in my life. It now opened a new door for new people, new experiences, new energies that come into my life. So I would say, like, just like awakening, dark night of the soul is more than just one. Like you don't just have one. And when I got through it, I was like, oh, praise, I'm done. It's time to move on. And it's like you feel yourself in this dark void for a while. And then when you finally start to creep out, you're like, I have energy again. I feel like going out into the world again. And, that's when you're out of the dark night of the soul. But then it wasn't, there was more after that. So I actually just ended up getting through another one last year. So
Wow.
I'm at that point again where it's like coming out and here I am peeking out again and looking around and, going out in public again. I
Uh,
find myself very recluse like whenever I go through the dark nights of the soul.
Yeah,
You
me.
get forced to sit with yourself.
Yeah, and I think for all that it's um sometimes I feel safe in my hermit mode when I'm going through a dark night of the soul. My last biggest one was the summer of 2023. I was out for 3 months. I had to stop my spiritual work and face what was going on. Mainly my um, fear and lack driven, kind of obsessing about just being hyper productive, almost like as a way to try and address that, to try and fill that empty void. And it was only ever going to burn me out. And I was lucky I had a couple of friends that pointed it out, and I managed to stop myself before I did any more damage to myself. Um, but it was, uh, yeah, it took me quite a few months afterwards to just gradually, like you say, like stepping outside, taking a look around, and feeling, at least for the moment, that it was like, whew, hope I never have to do that again in this lifetime. But I
Ah,
know that they do come more regularly. And maybe they just become smaller and more bite size. I'd maybe just to be a specific part of the day. I could just like, that's my Dark Knight of the Shadow, but it's never like that, right? It's the journey's always there to surprise and delight us. And I love that you said that you highlighted things that happened for me as well, and it sure resonate with many people. Like losing friends is a big thing, right? It's like you. I love you said it with such confidence, and I must admit, in hindsight, I look back now and say in confidence because I feel how good that was because they were friends of a version of me that frankly no longer exists. You know, the guy that would the Jon from 8 years ago that would go out drinking a lot and really loved moaning about everything across the whole world all the time. It was a great hobby. Right? I could blame the rest of the world on everything that was going
Yeah.
on inside of me. Um, and then so when that stops, it's quite shocking to people that change. And did you have any other either friendships or relationships that you had to kind of carry through that transition, or were you able to just let easily let go of those that didn't resonate anymore?
So mostly it was friends that fell away. And I did find like at the time my husband and I, um, he has been with the not awakened version, the extremely awakened version, and then the now embodied version of me.
Hmm.
So, through that, it was actually I was forced to also be in this relationship back then, now marriage, differently. So I had to change while being with him, and he had to change also with me. And I also found like, certain family members, I had to let them go. I couldn't be in connection anymore because my family was very much like what you said, they like to complain and gossip and it was like call you up on the phone and just tell you all their problems. And when you start to awaken in this way, you can't sit in that energy anymore when you're psychic, when you're intuitive, when you're a healer, when
Yeah,
you're sensitive and you're empathic.
it's like
It
an
just
attack.
it isn't, yeah, it's like an attack. And you get off the phone, you're like, oh my gosh, why do I feel so tired? And
Mhm.
it's because of that energy. Like you can't be in it no more. So, of all of the relationships, I would really say like everything had to fall away. And, I found that with my husband, we changed a lot together and we still change together because we're like in the whole twin flame union thing. So, also that energy of being in his presence forced me to have to heal and change too. So a lot of surrendering to, spirit and trusting that like this is what you got to do. Let your friends go. And then, as you let people go, new people come into your life and
Mhm.
you relate to them on a level. And then, as you change again, those people could fall away also. So I've had, the ending of relationships with friends. I had new spiritual friends come into my life, and then now here I am in 2025, where one of my New Year's resolutions was that I no longer am going to water those that don't water me in the same way, because I've always been the nurturer, the mother, the healer for everybody. And, most of the time they didn't bring that to the same frequency. And I realized that a lot of the relationships, even recent, were they were trauma bonded too, where I needed validation in myself and I needed people to validate what I was doing and how I was healing. But now I don't need that anymore. So those friends had to fall away most recent as well. And now I just spirit's like, okay, new people are coming. You have to surrender and just flow with this. So I'm like, okay, I thank you for the lessons. I thank you for the teachings. I thank you for the medicines. But now that door's closed and I allow my tribe to come in, I allow people who are here on this path that are where I am to come into my life now. So it's been one big surrendering of the process and trusting for sure.
Wow. I love I love your surrendering, and you're absolutely right. Like when I feel like the more you practice increasing your sensitivity, because we would traditionally we would use the word sensitive negatively. We would say, "Oh, you're too sensitive," And now, now that it says on my business card, psychic, it's like I've got to be really sensitive. I've got to be like, and it's exciting the more sensitive I become. But with it comes, um, I feel that's one of the biggest challenges I have with friendships is people not really respecting some of those energetic boundaries, because it's so easy to say, to look at your phone and go, well, I never, never negatively sent you a DM message and said anything bad to you. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, if if we're connected in any way and you're like thinking about me or doing something, like, you're resonating this out across the universe. And I'm not like intentionally protecting myself, especially from what I consider to be a friend, from that energy. So I'm going to receive things. And so the next time we meet together, we can't just pretend that it didn't happen, that the energy exchange didn't happen, or the telepathic exchange, or dream interactions, or whatever. And I think that it's a whole new level of relationships, isn't it? It's like, oh, so
Yeah,
I need to be even more responsible with my thoughts and feelings, because they are
yeah.
actions. They are actions.
Yeah, because your thoughts and your feelings create things. That was a big message that I got recently, when I was channeling some light language was, remember that your thoughts can create things. And it's so important to be aware of what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and also to be able to discern that it may not be your thought or feeling, especially when you're psychic. You pick up on everything.
Yeah.
Someone's thinking of you and you get the little ding. You're like, oh, weird. Someone popped in my head.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey. And you mentioned um with your partner, your husband. I know my wife and I, as I've changed to these different versions of John, and we met when I was 15 and a half.
Oh
I'm
my
now
goodness.
48, so it's like it's been a long time together. And it's quite funny because every time she talks about the changes, I often say, do you remember what I was like when I was 15? I was much more like this. I I was I was like really the same John then, but there was a whole corporate John in between, and the greedy capitalist John, and like all these different versions of me. And um and it's, I think it's a big thing, right, for uh both partners, because my wife's incredibly supportive and very, very grounded, and offers incredible advice even when I come to her with really quite, woo woo metaphysical things. She gives great advice, and it's been so helpful for me, often navigating the really simple human things. And she's seen it as well. Like, we've had, our friendship group has changed dramatically since my awakening, because I'm not the drinking buddy I was. But there's many other things that, constantly change in our lives. And I also know a lot of people that have broken up their relationships because they just find it so difficult to, for these new versions of at least one of them, to be together. But it doesn't have to be like that. Like any change in a relationship, you can choose. Um, I do think one of the most important things is not to project. Like, I'd never say to my wife, when are you going to wake up? Because she doesn't need to, right? I just like,
Yeah.
love is loving someone as they are, and never hoping that they will, be something else, or having love with condition. Um, and I think that's, if you can keep in that kind of happy, healthy, take it day by day and just see how it feels, it's a huge help in relationships.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also a blessing to have somebody that isn't as awakened, especially when you're sensitive and you're very psychic and naturally ungrounded. Like, my husband's a very grounded person and very amazing with advice also. And I find that a lot of times it's that balance that we need is being someone that's naturally very connected to, the stars, aliens, the galactics, and, angels, and not being very much grounded in the physical. Having a partner that's very grounded in the physical is a beautiful gift to have them bring you back whenever you need them to. So I found that so amazing. Like, at first, it was like, how do I stay and become this new version of me, while being in this old version, and it just naturally, if it's meant to be, it's going to transform with you on your path. And that's not for everybody. Some people are going to have to leave relationships and partners, and because it's not serving anymore. But when you're meant to be with somebody that's supposed to help you transform. And, when you're in that kind of partnership, it will naturally, inevitably change with you, especially as your frequency changes and, you do the healing work. It's going to ripple out of your heart and bless them, and they're going to receive what they need to. And also, everybody has their own awakening time and contract, and soul incarnations. Like, we're old souls here, you and I. Our partners may not be as old, like my husband's an old soul, but I don't know if he's had as many incarnations as me. So sometimes they're on exactly where they need to be, because it's not time for them to fully awaken and embody that. And they may not in this life. They
Yeah.
might just be here to keep us grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I left my corporate job in May last year, and I was saying to my wife, so here, like I don't have a plan, but like my vision is I'll just do like all this online work, and I'll make enough money to, I'm still the main wage earner, so I'll do all that, and it'll be great. And she's looking at me like, it's just like, so you're doing all this at home, like it's all online stuff. Yeah, yeah, that's what I'll do. Why don't you do like some stuff? Maybe it'd be good for you to do some stuff in person. It's like, like with people, like you mean face to face? And she said, since the whole COVID thing, and it'd be good for you to get out. And so she started searching for stuff. She's like, you should get a qualification in something, blah blah. And she found reflexology, and a course running in Edinburgh, the city nearby. And she said, you should sign up for this. And I just remember being like, it was all these very grounded things all in like this baptism of fire, because literally what happened was I signed up. I went to it 3 weeks later. There's a room of 16 women, and I was the only male. No introductions. Hello from the tutor. Okay, beds out and so beds up and feet out. And I never even had reflexology. I didn't know anything about it. I never even watched a video about it. And I just remember doing my fellow student Mercedes feet, and she just looked at me and she said, "I have Shrek's feet. I have an ogre's feet." And it's like, "Oh, you have beautiful feet," and that's how it started. And I remember going through that whole training and feeling like, I mean, literally grounding, right? It's people's feet, so it's like bare feet. The energy of it was just so helpful to me, because it brought me out. I met a lot of people in the training course. I had to do 100 hours of sessions for people in person. And for me, it created, and I went on, I loved it so much. I went on and did Swedish massage, and I created the psychic kind of blends, well, quantum healing, psychic reading, and reflexology and Swedish massage. But now once a week, so every Tuesday, I do a full day in a well-being center nearby for my psychic services. And if I hadn't, what I didn't know, talking about the grounded part, is it's really hard to get insurance on something, especially that you've just created yourself, like Jon Binnie's quantum healing. And I'm like, oh, like I can't get any insurance. And also, it's difficult for places to accept you if you don't have anything like that. So some of these like grounding principles, they are, yeah, really, really helpful. Um, I was going to ask you about parenting. My or our kids are 19 and 15 now, but yours must be a bit younger. Tell me a bit what your experience has been like so far, being a mother through your awakening experiences.
So my oldest is 10, and then I have my middle child. She will be 6 next month, and then my baby that I had last year will be a year old next month. I
Oh.
don't know where the time has gone, but so my oldest, I was not awakened with her. So, I was still living through some old ways of being whenever I was parenting her younger age or ages. And then with my middle child, like I said, she's the one that awakened me, her energy. So with the last one, I was most certainly awakened with him. So it's been a journey. It's been challenging in regards to having proper boundaries, with what you're going to do and not do with family, with friends, and then being able to hold space for very sensitive children while
Mm.
also being very sensitive So self-care and self-love has been like a big lesson and journey for me on this entire path, is learning to bring in more self-care and self-love time, to like recharge yourself, because as a caretaker, a nurturer, you're always giving, 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 giving. And if you're always giving and not refilling yourself, you deplete your own energy. So
Hmm.
I find that I'm very in tune with my children's energies. Like I can feel when there's something off. I can feel when something needs to be transmuted if they pick up something somewhere. Because, kids they're naturally protected, very protected, but they're also very open. So sometimes they take on things that's not theirs. So, I can see the signs and feel the signs in my kids. So sometimes it's challenging to, be as sensitive as I am, and then always have these different energies of just different orbits coming around in the house and out of the house and in the house and out of the house and in the house, and cleanse this, cleanse that, and then something else comes in and you got to cleanse it and get rid of it, and so it's sometimes challenging to know like what is ours and what's not. And I found that being the part that I had to learn the most, was being able to discern what was my energy and what was my children's, and what needs do they need that need to be met. Because I'm very psychic, that I feel and take on different energies. So like it would be me processing and transmuting for my kids, because they can't do that just yet.
Hmm.
So that part can sometimes be challenging, but you bring in that grounding aspect and it makes it easier. But it's also at the same time, I mean, it's one of the most beautiful transformations to go through, because had I never had my children, I wouldn't be who I am right now or where I'm at right now. It's through parenting them, it has forced me to be a better person in every moment and to change and to heal. And every day is different. So there'll be days where I'm my best version and days where I'm not my best version. And there's always an opportunity to see from a different perception of, okay, what do I need to heal in myself? What part of my kids is triggering me? What's triggering me? What is the message in that? What do I need to heal that's there? Because your children are your messengers, they are your mirrors. So
Yeah.
most of the time, they're going to mirror to you exactly what you need to heal and what you need to change about yourself. And a lot of times, like some people on the path, they'll like go and have someone do healing on their kid because there's something going wrong, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times it's the parent that needs the healing, because the child's only mirroring to you what you need to change in yourself. So,
Yeah.
through parenting, my children has forced me to change. It has forced me to heal. It has forced me to hold more space for myself so that I can hold more space for them. And, the biggest thing has been just letting go of a lot of old things too, as a family, letting go of unhealthy things, unhealthy eating, unhealthy ways of speaking to others. And it's been a beautiful journey, a beautiful eye-opening journey and adventure for sure. It's big
Wow.
adventure. And they awaken
Yes.
parts of you that you didn't even know was possible.
Mhm. Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
My with my children, my daughter, she was at my awakening, which was in November 2017. It was, I said, "Oh, my friend's running a." I didn't even know what it meant. A Kundalini meditation, yoga meditation session, and I didn't even bother to Google what Kundalini meant. No idea what it was, and little did I know, of course, what was going to happen. And her experience, I think she found it quite pleasant, um, but I'm sure she was because 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 when she's like 12, 13, she's like looking at me afterwards, kind of like her eyes are like wide open. And I was like, I saw the planets and the stars and all these things. And she's like, wow, that you really enjoyed that, didn't you, Dad? And it's like, yeah, I think I asked the teacher and they said I could just do it every day. I should like meditate every day if I want to. And that was the start of well, where I am now. Um, and she's always she's collected crystals and been on and off, like in and out of I guess this the energetic side of reality, but also I feel like what was important, especially I left my corporate job just before she left, just a few months before she left home to go to university, and I felt like it was important to lead by example and say you could tell it was the right time for me to leave because I was talking about it a lot and I did it, and now I'm following my passion. and it's going better than I could have hoped. And I felt that was really important too, because it would have been so easy, especially with university costs, to just go, oh, let's just wait another 4 years, um, or whatever it be until she finishes university. Like you, yeah, I couldn't wait. With my son, he was like very, very sensitive, younger, and he had a lot of night terrors for um, almost 8 years,
Oh my goodness.
screaming every night, like just like something's in the room chasing him around. Sometimes you get out, quite a lot, you get out of bed and run around the house screaming. And yeah, I asked a friend to do a reading for him, and they said he's just like you, John. Like, why would you send him into to battle without teaching him how to defend himself? And I was like, what do you mean? Said, well, that's what's happening at nighttime is he needs to learn how to protect himself. And so and I said, what do I do? And they just said, well, you already know it. Like, just go in. I was only about a year or two into doing that work. Um, and the first night I did a meditation, it stopped. It never started again after that, after 8 years. And we were like
Wow.
pulling our hair out, like lack of sleep every night. And so now, and we did it for months. And so now when I talk to him about, I know Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, in between him gaming or we're watching movies or going camping, he's like, he's like, yeah, and I can talk to my spirit guides when I want to. And it's like, it's just so matter of fact. It's almost like um, those things that were huge concepts to me. I had no idea who these archangel beings were or if I believed in them or not. And he's just very comfortable that there's stuff out there that if he wants to develop it further, he will. But he also said to me, he said, when I said to him, I'm leaving my corporate job last year, he said, oh, well, I'll probably leave home before we're totally bankrupt and like living under a bridge in a cardboard box. It's like,
Oh,
wow, like you're saying, Samantha, it's like that perfect mirror of like my worst doubt, my worst fear.
yeah.
Um, and so I was saying to him this year, I was saying, hey, look how things turned out. Like we're still in our same house, and actually things are going really well, better than I could have expected. And he said, I know. I mean, who would have thought that?
That's just so funny.
Yeah, it's a wonderful experience. Um,
They show you what you need to heal. It's like, oh, okay, finance stuff. Let me heal that one. Root chakra.
that's right. Anything else while I'm at it? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, tell me more about your or tell us more about your services. If you're offering services, you mentioned training. Um, how can people get in touch and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so I am currently offering angelic healings, which I combine angelic shamanism and light language in my sessions. So I am an angelic shaman and I work with galactics and angels, a lot of archangels. I do a lot of light language and I have womb healings for the divine feminines and also divine masculines. So I do womb healings, angelic healings, and also mediumship, and then angelic readings. And all of that is on my website at angelicallyaligned.com. Um, Most of the time, it's like a booking service. I mostly do it on the weekends, but if people need to reach out, they can always reach out to me on my email, which is angelicallyaligned@gmail.com. And I can always open up a little slot there if we need to. But most of the time, it's just on the weekends that I do that, and sometimes on the evenings during the week. But I have found that it flows when it needs to. So whenever people align, they need to come in. It's like the calendar just opens up a little slot and people can come on in.
Oh,
Spirit
wow.
opens up the door for people when it's meant to be. So
Mhm.
super, super beautiful whenever that happens. But I
Mm.
am doing training too. Yes, you mentioned training. So I'm actually training with a medicine man in Canada and I'm deepening my shamanic journey right now. But I went through an entire like 2 year program of angelic shamanism is basically what I would call it. And it's just working with archangels and angels and the elementals. And then I also combine my light language abilities in there. So that came online from my Kundalini awakening, the light language. And it's just something that emerges that you just can't really push it away. So when you're in a session, even if it's an angelic healing, it's like, okay, light language wants to come in and rewire something anyway, so it does.
Yeah, I love that. I often, usually I get in the habit. I, I don't introduce my other light languages, but when it's dragon light language, I'll say, now just to let you know, I'm guided to offer, especially for the heart, I'll give you some dragon light language, but it is quite loud and it's like rah, and they're like, oh, okay, that's lovely, thank you. Um, but yeah, I think it's so powerful, right? Like never, never hide these parts of us. And I love you're already so expansive in your service offerings, and it's easy, it's tempting sometimes just go, oh, I'll not mention aliens, or oh, I'll not mention the archangels, they might think I'm religious, or I'll not mention light language, they won't understand, or they'll think it's speaking in tongues or something demonic. And it's like, actually, it's, these are just the starts of us learning this hugely expansive domain of spirituality, energetics, metaphysics, and beyond.
Yeah, I found that when light language came online for me, it was probably one of the most expansive gifts that I have, and also the one I pushed away the most.
Mhm.
I was like, no, because at the time, people weren't really sharing it. Nowadays, you see a lot more of it out there, but I didn't really share a lot of it because of, just fear, and I had to work through those fears and whatnot. But it's one of the most powerful gifts that I have access to, and it's just like your psychic intuition. Light language is so psychic and so quantum, and it rewires and it untangles and it collapses old timelines and creates new timelines. It's like infinite things you can do with it, and there's infinite versions of it and infinite languages of it. Like you mentioned the beginning of your blue being you saw, like what came to my mind was to really, really crazy is I just made a video the other day about my Kundalini awakening, and I remembered that there was three tall blue beings that came to me before my Kundalini activation had happened. So I thought that was interesting that you mentioned seeing that version of yourself, because I have been becoming aware of that version too coming in. And in the Blu-ray, light language is very clicky and like like a lot of different programming type of sounds that come through
Mhm.
with that. And the angels that I channel the light language with them, it's very angelic and very feminine and wispy and nurtury. And then you have like the more earthly type of elementals that you're channeling, and it's more like the dragony type of vibe and energy. So I find that the more you indulge in the light language, the more different beings come through. And I've
Yeah,
channeled so many different beings. I've channeled the, aliens, galactics, star beings, things, plants,
yeah.
trees,
It's like feeding rocks.
clouds.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, yeah, and I love like how you're exploring it with such magic, right? It's like it should feel joyful and playful. And it's so lovely to see that more and more people are exploring it, that we're normalizing. Sometimes when I speak to clients, maybe especially in person sessions where it's kind of uh, I don't know, more like an introduction to some of my work. Um, if I mention light language, they'll be like, I think I've heard of that. What is that? But there's some online. It's like often once you see it once, the algorithms are like, great, let's keep showing it to them. And I can encourage to others with light language is to please do it safely. Please know who you're channeling,
Yeah.
because it just makes such a difference. And but
Tension
it yeah,
also.
yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
So, oh, and I must say, I was terrified of sharing light language. I thought it was of all the things that would make people absolutely certain I'd lost my mind, had gone through a midlife crisis, and was ready to be put in a padded cell, like this. That it would be that, and then I started to realize that it's that I was just holding on to that next wave of people that I just needed to let go of, and even like family and friends, like you need to be strong with your boundaries and say, well, I had to say to myself, look, if they're going to troll me in person or online, if it's trolling like behavior and they're not supportive of who I genuinely feel, like I sat on it for months, like I know that it's not just you know, I wish it was in some respects. Part of me was like, I wish it was just a midlife crisis. I could buy a motorbike, I don't know, wear tight clothes and go on holiday with younger people or whatever it was that I would get out of my system. It's like, no, this is like a huge shift. This is like a personality shift. Um,
Uh,
yeah, I definitely enjoy just being more and more expansive, and being comfortable with saying things like, yeah, I speak light language, I'm psychic. It was only a year ago I was crying in a meditation group going, I think I'm psychic and I'm coming out of my psychic closet. So it's wonderful to to share more of ourselves. Um,
I was very scared to share light language too and share it with my family and my daughter. I'll be in the car after picking them up and I'm over here like just channeling, like just driving and channeling, clearing, burping, releasing and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Transmuting energy." And she's like, "Okay, well, what are you doing with your hands?" I'm like, "Light language." Light language. And the more that I bring that out into their lives, the more they're aware. And I find too that as a mother, you can transmute and heal your kids with light language too. And the more that you do that, the more open they are. And my daughter recently had like this weird psychic attack going on, and like I was like, "Can I heal?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." So I call in Archangel Michael, and I'm like snapping my fingers and clapping and calling in the energy, going over her aura and scanning her field. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, find it." And then we're transmuting it with light language, and she's releasing, and it's just like, how do you do that? And I was like, it just happens. Mommy just does it. I don't know how mommy does it, but mommy just does. And my youngest one, she's like, mommy does that thing where she like talks, like those words like blah blah blah, blah. And I was like, it's light language. And she's like, okay. She's like, but what are you saying? And I was like, well, it's like it's soul language is pretty much what I say. It's like mommy speaking from her soul or heart. My youngest one, my middle one, she loves it. She loves the light language. And my oldest one is just like, I don't know about that. And the more that you just allow and let it flow, the more it comes through. And especially like in every moment, you just doing something and it starts to just flow out of you. I'm like, okay, all right, light language is coming in. You ever get it telepathically where you hear it in your head and you're not saying it and you're like, oh, it wants to come out so bad.
you must speak. Uh,
Yeah.
it's so true. I feel like when I do it a lot of all the places, a bit like singing. I do it in the toilet in the restroom. And I go in and and I act like the rest of the house can't hear me. It's not a very big house, and all you can hear is like blah, 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 and like blah, and they're like, "What are you doing in there?" And it's like, well, I'm just being a dragon, and I'm doing my dragon-like language, and they're like, okay, just checking you're okay in there, and it's quite funny because it's like when you do these things, when you do something that's maybe, especially when it's more expansive and a bit magical and a bit mysterious, it's like you're talking to the soul, especially for children, and saying, "You remember that thing that you used to do in a previous life? We do that here too. Like we do this on Earth." And like, "Oh, that thing," and then they're kind of left with this like kind of half past life memory and then this new memory they're forming, and they're like, there's something familiar but I can't quite put my finger on it. And a theme for me, a few people have said for the last 2 days in my comments on my songs, they keep saying no words or more than words, and it's because they're describing the limitation of our English language at least, and it's crazy, right, when you think about how limited languages for expression. No wonder we have so much beautiful art and music and singing and dancing and all these incredible ways of expressing ourselves, because the words are just such a small part of our spectrum. And yeah, I feel so expansive in light language. I often feel like I could literally take an hour to an hour and a half telling this whole huge story in English, and then maybe just 2 or 3 minutes of light language, and you're done, because it has all the
Yeah.
energy and the codes and the colors and the frequencies, and it's so expansive all at the same time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful gift for sure. Oh, I love it. I do a lot of like grid work with light language when I'm driving. I find that it comes on a lot when I'm driving, and A lot of my light language is frequency through voice, but also I find a lot of it is like with my hands too. When it came online, it was a lot of like moving my hands certain places and, moving the energy around. And the more you do that, the more it comes in different forms and different ways. And the dream space, that one's a big one for me. I found that the more that I repressed my light language, the more it'd come into my dreams. And I would be in these like spaces where I was like doing some very deep like earth grid work, and
Mm.
I would turn into like goddess Kali or Kaylee. I don't know how to pronounce it. I would turn
Kali.
into her and I would speak light language and
Wow.
like collapse these things on earth that needed to be transmuted with light language, and it just kept happening and happening and happening. And I had a teacher who was totally against light language and was like, no, that's not anything, like I don't know what that is. And so I had this like idea of like I couldn't be myself because of this projection from the teacher, so I
Mm.
would hide it. And the more that I hid it from myself, the more that like it would just haunt my dreams of I would turn into light language and
It's
code in
real.
the
It's
dream
real.
space. And certain people that speak light language would come into my dreams and we would do light language together. And I'm like, okay, so this is happening on like a very, very deep quantum level. I was like, okay, this is very much more than what my mind can comprehend of it. And wow, it's been expansive for sure. And I found too that with my Andara crystals that I work with, my Andaras, they have brought in a lot of different light language too, and a lot of different light codes because I see light codes also, and they communicate telepathically and would tell me that like, put us outside so we can anchor in the light codes coming in and upgrade the frequency where you're at. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And then I would hold a certain piece, like a certain Andara or crystal, and then I would start to channel a different like Lemurian light language. So
Mhm.
it goes back to like far past what we can humanly understand, like, past Lemurian timelines too. I know in Lemuria, we did a lot of light coding and light language and transmitting that energy into crystals and whatnot too. It's very, very expansive and powerful. And man, all the timelines are like coming together now where people from Lemuria are stepping more into that gift, into that ability of sharing their light language. So that's
That makes
actually how I
perfect sense.
found you with
Oh,
light
did you?
language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was just holding the Andara that you sent me. And it's funny as you said it, and thank you again for sending it. Um, as oh, and by the way, if you're watching this, please do not send me any crystals because I'm on a strict budget. I don't want to take up the space. Please gift it to someone else. But as you said, like what we were doing in Lemuria and other past lives on Earth is it's like we were doing it for us now. I own a. It took me a while to get data out of my pocket, but I have an obsidian arrowhead that is the only object I found so far that I've owned in previous lives. And I was like, when someone sent it to me, it's like, John, I found it. I found yours. And I'm like, what? What did you find? I didn't lose anything. And they're like, no, no, no. It's like you'll know when you see it. And when I touched it, like just these huge visions came back of using it for healing after like kind of like a blend of like psychic and physical attacks, like psychic warriors attacking each other. And so it's almost like having a cursed arrowhead in you. I would use it to like scoop out the energy, the infection. Um, and that blew my mind. I was like, how did I just know all that? All I did was touch this crystal, and I remember you. Wow. Well, I would love to talk forever with you, literally, and I'd love to talk more. But I should let you go, and I will add in your website into the video below. Is that the best place? And you said your email as well, so I'll add that in. And just want to say a massive thank you for coming along. And it it is really inspirational to see you traverse like big changes in your life and being a parent and training at the same time and doing sessions for people. It's a lot all at once, and to be nurturing yourself and looking after yourself, and the latter is my biggest challenge, is like creating space and capacity and self-love. They're big things. But yeah, congratulations on your amazing journey so far, and thank you to your service for Earth. We need you. And it's greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for bringing me here. It's been beautiful to share my journey, and I send so much love and good energy to everyone. And until next time.
Until next time. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.